on mute. Okay. I'd like to call this meeting of Board of Selectmen to order. Meeting is September 6, 2022. Let us start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Pam. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're having this meeting in the Board of Selectmen office because the auditorium is being used for the voting for today's primary. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to acknowledge the passing of former Selectman Vinnie Villomeno and extend the condolences of the Board of Selectmen and the Town Hall to his family and honors his service 12 years to the town as Selectman, as well as in various other capacities. All right, so we're going to review minutes.
That's if anyone's recorded.
I'm sorry?
That's if anyone's recorded.
Do we care? You never cared.
No, I want to make you a better person than me.
Oh. Is anyone else recording this meeting? So, as Donna said before, they need a light. We have minutes to review. We have the minutes of July 11. Topics at that meeting was a review of the end of year financial.
Reviewed them.
I think we did
review them, but I needed to get some clarification from Cliff, so I wanted to make sure the numbers were correct within.
So has there already been an approval of these, or?
We reviewed, but I might have.
I'll motion to approve July 11th, 2022.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. July 22nd, July 25th. Connie attended. There was a dog hearing. And then 3 hours later, we had a meeting with the Government Study Committee. You weren't, seriously?
That was really?
Yes.
I missed it?
3 of them.
I was there.
Yeah. We appointed a new police officer. Carrie was here for hours.
Motion to approve July 25th, 2022 minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. I'd like to welcome the advisory committee and town accountant, the town treasurer. And I'm going to have a short discussion for the special town meeting that's been posted for the 24th of October. You have copies, I think, of a draft warrant right now. Is there anything that you all see that you're aware of that's not on the draft agenda at this point? Or would you like a little recap of where we stand financially? Let's do that. Cliff, give us a quick recap of the free cash.
600 something thousand, I forgot the exact total.
Upper sixes, right?
It's the voters' decision on how to vote that, whether all of them choose to reduce the tax rate, or traditionally, we've had some reduce the tax rate, others pay specific items, and others actually just go to stabilization. But I would maybe jump the gun here a little bit and give you my opinion. I think we have to be careful. I think in the last few years, we've started to talk in terms of a percentage of what the taxes are going to go up. And I think last year we had a selectmen's meeting, we projected a 1%. For a lot of people with $5,000 assessments, they got a lot more than $50. So I think what we have to do is be a little more proactive in terms of not speaking in terms of percentages of what the taxes will go up, but to speak in terms of the fact that town people are voting the money. So this is what they want us to spend. We will take the assets that we get from non-tax revenues, state monies coming in, et cetera, excise taxes coming in, and we will take those and apply them to the tax rate in December. And somebody that gets a higher tax bill than what they projected from our discussion,
Mhm.
they can rest assured, and it's always been this way, that we don't spend money indiscriminately.
Mhm.
We spend money very carefully, we appropriate money very carefully. Town people have always responded
Mhm.
to our requests for specific items, apropos the the garage building or the ambulance or other items, they've always responded to the need.
Mhm.
And there are needs, we have some serious needs on the horizon. But I'd be very careful to speak in terms of, well, I think we're only gonna raise the taxes 1%. There's too many variables involved on the assessment end of it
Mhm.
for us to rest assured that the taxes are only gonna go up 1%. So that's an opinion. I just think we need to do a better job of conveying that we spend money responsibly, we raise money responsibly, and rest assured, we're doing the best we can with your money.
As you said, we have a pretty good number for certified free cash, with the caveat that because of various, whatever you want to call it, from the state reimbursing us, there's some carryover to next year outside of that,
Right.
that will start out in the
Yeah,
black next year.
We did receive half of what they owe us, so
Mhm.
that, if we'd have gotten that before July,
Right,
the free cash would have been almost $1 million.
sure.
But we did receive that money, actually just now, just posted it.
Yeah.
The other half, we don't get till next year. So we will be hit with that on our free cash a year from now.
Mhm.
So I think, now you asked me about, not sure how you phrased it, but what's the financial situation for the county? We're in really, really, really good shape.
Mhm.
We have cash flow, we're not borrowing. I don't think we borrowed last year at all, did we? No. So we're managing the funds, we're spending the funds responsibly, and we're not going out and spending money. Back when it was 1.25%, who cared, But money costs money now.
Mhm.
Wow, and we haven't done that in a couple of years.
I know we focus on the internal borrowing.
Right.
And Dick, what's the number for stabilization right now?
It's about 1.6 million, something like that.
Mhm. And I asked you about, was there a need for any pay down of any debt?
Well, there is no short-term debt.
It's all long term.
There's nothing. The only thing we have outside of the school right now is the police station.
Mhm.
That is in the 2 to 3% range, and it's not callable for the first 10 years anyway, so
Okay.
it is what it is. We're only talking about 60,000 a year in interest payments on that,
Right.
something along that, even though we're fairly early into that mortgage, we're only 5 years into that thing, something like that.
Mhm.
So there's nothing to do with debt. Now, our stabilization numbers would be wonderful. And I would just say, I'm just really happy with it, except that we have some capital projects hanging over our head.
Mhm.
The firehouse, this building, the senior center are all things that we're gonna be looking at. That we probably, I was hoping we'd already be working forward on some of them already. But for what it is, we can put a little money aside to defray the borrowing costs when we finally do pull the trigger on some of these, and we're going to have to, obviously. A couple of those are pushing us pretty hard.
We have a potential for some severe infrastructure costs too, in terms of bridges. But it looks like, from what we're hearing, that a lot of that will be defrayed by grants, et cetera, from the state. You're already hearing that they'll take care of the Rockadundy Bridge. They're putting money into the South Road Bridge. And to be clear, the South Road Bridge is that small bridge as you go up South Road, not the major bridge at the bottom. And then, of course, the Laughing Brook Bridge, which has been an area of concern for several years.
I'd kind of like to add on to Cliff's comment too about what happened with the tax rate last year. We were shooting for like a 1% increase. We actually came in at 0.6%. The thing that I'd never seen before is we had and it was investigation after the fact that I dug all this out, was that we're about 80% residential real estate. We're about 5% commercial real estate, and 15% is personal property. most of that personal property is utility companies,
Mhm.
solar fields, power plants, light poles, that type of thing. As all you guys know, but not everybody on the watching this might, as valuations go up, the tax rate goes down. The town doesn't collect any extra money from valuations going up. But what happened last year was residential values took a huge spike
Mhm.
and personal property did not, and commercial did not. So they ended up bearing a disproportionate share of the increase because of that. I had never seen that big a swing before.
Right.
We'll try to watch that as soon as the assessors have some data, so we don't get surprised again. But that was the first time I'd ever seen that happen. That was bizarre.
Cliff and I had this conversation. I did ask the assessors how close they were to some kind of preliminary number, and they're a few weeks away, but obviously we hope to have something in September to really give us a thought of,
You never have.
well,
Yeah,
I know,
I
but we still need something, to judge what are we going to do? Is there a division? Is there a savings, whichever?
They're gonna try to have some kind of conservative estimate before the fall town meeting,
Mhm.
but honestly, they don't have to have that job done till Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
That's unfortunately their timeline.
Mhm.
But like I said, we're in very good shape now. Forgive me for talking percentages, but if we did nothing right now, based on some plug numbers, some guesses,
Mhm.
we're still under a 1% increase
Sure.
right now.
Yeah.
But I do want to warn you that every 136,000 in spending
Mhm.
is about 1% more.
So right now, we have a tentative draft agenda or warrant for the special town meeting. The major item on there, which the board has kicked around, is that because of the increase in percentage for the health insurance, some retirements, which have buyback impacts, et cetera. Obviously, a cost increase from the insurance company, which shocked nobody, I guess. We're going to need to put some more money in employee benefits, and I think Dick has been working on a projected number somewhere between 80 and 100,000 for that, probably, between the buybacks, et cetera, right?
That's actually a little low.
There's this number.
How come we were so far off on our last year on our projection,
On which,
our estimate for the employee benefits?
the health insurance change?
Yeah, I mean, we know how many employees we had, we know it was gonna go up 7%. We knew
The percentage change,
the percentage change, we knew what the percentage change was, we knew what the payroll was.
we didn't know that when we appropriated for 22.
No, we didn't, John.
No, and
Yes, we did.
We didn't know the percentage the town was gonna share of the cost to the employee.
Yes, we did, because we announced it and we voted on it and we had it in our contracts.
that was after the Springtown meeting.
No, the contracts were all settled before the town meeting.
I think we voted for the employee handbook before that, but then I don't know that you had the change from Blue Cross before.
Well, that's what I'm referring to.
So that, I don't know that we knew that number.
Well, we knew that number was a 7% increase. We knew that in March.
Yeah, we knew it was gonna be in that ballpark, but I didn't think we had the contract from the police before that.
Yeah, we
Signed it at the
did.
town meeting.
Okay.
So I mean, anyhow, we are where we
So
are.
I don't, but that number was never changed for 22.
Right, we never did go back and change that number. then.
No, and we also didn't put in the $3,000 for the
The three,
Stipend.
yeah.
stipend,
Just
so,
did that.
yeah.
The other thing is the one thing we couldn't predict is how many people were going.
Right.
Current employees that weren't using our services were gonna change to our service because it was a better deal than their spouses.
Yeah, but I was just wondering, because we knew X number of employees were doing it, we knew what their salaries were gonna be in that, so I think we just, all we're moving forward.
Right, so we kept it kind of flat, and now we
Yeah.
know, if you looked at it, it's a pretty sizable increase. But we all know insurance rates are going up, we all
Yeah.
know, with the advantage of the town doing the right thing,
And that's,
people are gonna
and
take it.
that's my concern
and buy
about the
it.
free cash for this year, because next year we have the ambulance contract is up, the trash hauling contract is up, there'll be raises for employees. We've got some negotiations with the highway union. I made a list of things here. We got several things we know. The Hamden County Retirement Board will go up.
Mhm.
What else? I made a list, but there's a few things that we have that we know are gonna happen.
Most of the items are up.
Yeah.
Easier to make a list of what's not up, actually.
Yes, exactly.
But I mean, so that's a good case then for putting as much money in stabilization, so you have that available.
Well,
And
what
as I
happens
said,
if we don't do anything with free cash at the special town meeting? We just
It just
hold on to
rolls-
it.
It rolls over. It's,
Yeah. So you could go to town meeting the next time and say, okay, we've got this 600,000 that we can spend.
You can use it for 2024.
So a lot will
Same.
depend on kind of like an estimate of what the tax rate will be.
The advantage of putting it in stabilization is, well, first of all, it compounds itself on interest rather than just going to general fund,
Yeah.
not a big deal. But also, it requires a more determined vote of town meeting to spend it then.
2/3 out of 2/3.
Exactly, rather than somebody packing a special meeting and suddenly, let's have a,
$1 million.
yeah, let's have a full-time.
because it's a funding source that's available for next town meeting, but as you say, it only requires a majority vote to spend from that free cash.
And if you, between now and then, if you had something come up that was, and they've done it before, something unforeseen comes up, that money can be used at a special town meeting within the annual in May. Okay. And you can spend that money immediately, because we have it. We're not waiting to raise the taxes, we have the money, so we can spend it.
Yeah, we've done that before.
But both funding sources would require a special town meeting. It's not,
Absolutely.
be clear, the selectman does not have the authority to spend from free
No,
cash without action of town
that's,
meeting.
that's,
So
yeah.
there's no.
To go back to stabilization real quick for a second. I remember a conversation we had before that the state likes to see a certain percentage in stabilization. How
Well,
close are we to that? Or
We're close to the top.
okay,
And that goes back to my comments about if it wasn't for the large capital projects that are
Right.
hanging over our head,
Mhm.
which are potentially millions of,
right.
many millions of dollars, then I wouldn't say we need to pad that much more.
Mhm.
But because those things are hanging out there, you know, the firehouse might be able to be solved with a $2 million solution. Well, you know, if we've got close to $2 million in stabilization, we probably don't have to borrow much to do that.
But then we gotta rebuild it back up.
Well, yeah,
That would be the goal then.
Okay.
yeah.
And we don't need to come back to that percentage
And-
in one shot, right? It could be over
Heavens
years.
no.
No, it's a recommendation. It's not like they.
Yeah,
Right.
And, you know, if it's a $2 million project, so we take $1 million on stabilization, borrow $1 million, you know, on state house notes.
Our borrowing right now, our debt ratio is very low.
We're in good shape.
So Carol, so
Well, I just was wondering, in terms of the warrant, two questions. These, generally at special town meeting, we're only dealing with things that are unforeseen. And a couple of these look like.
right,
they would be
let me go
they
over
would
a
be
couple of these.
typical
A couple of
annual
these
town
Bob
meeting.
put on there without, you know, these haven't been determined also. If you want, I'll go through. Bob had the purchase of a police cruiser on there because it's kind of an annual special town meeting thing. There's been no determination either by the chief or the board that there actually is a need for an extra cruiser at the fall town meeting. So that may not stay.
That one did surprise me for two
Yeah.
reasons.
Didn't
At
we
Cap-
buy two in the,
Hmm?
didn't we buy two the last time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I left it on there because in the spring we said, no, let's wait until later. So I put it on in case you want to do it. It can come right off.
My memory from
You don't.
capital planning meeting was that one, there was none of them aging out on mileage. And second, the capital planning a couple of months ago voted to recommend the selectmen that the cruisers go to a higher mileage rate.
Right,
So this really surprised me.
right. The only caveat might be that, and there was conversation about this, that the animal control vehicle is very challenged. If there was a cruiser that was in the 60 to 70 with some bones still on it, perhaps the board might recommend something for that. But we don't have those numbers yet. I talked to Tad today about it, and he's gonna look into that. That would be the only caveat right there, because if you're going to get into a huge repair charge for this other vehicle, maybe picking off a few months, much like we did when we recommended the truck for parks, by going a year early on the highway vehicle, something like that. So highway garage security system, we have a new building. We have no security. We're getting a quote on that too.
The security for the water system was being hooked up today and tomorrow. And after that work is done, Somebody's gonna go over to the highway garage
And do a
and
quote.
give us the information that we need.
Could I?
It's on there.
Go ahead, Don.
We have 157,000 right now left over in the highway building
Right.
fund. You know, is that gonna all go, or will there be money in there for the security system?
With,
It's all
even
gonna
with the
go if they don't-
alternates we chose, it's gonna be all, Yeah.
If they don't use it on the building, it's going, but there's no reason why they couldn't use it for a security system. Most buildings,
no, there's not gonna be, with the alternates that were approved by the board, the building, it's
Gonna
all,
use up
it's
the
all
whole thing?
budget. Yeah, I mean, there were 3 alternates that
Yeah.
weren't voted because there wasn't enough funding for it. This is not gonna be hugely expensive, it's just prudent. We'll wait for that quote, but I mean, you've got a building with no security.
Well, 2 comments, one's a throwaway, that I was surprised that wasn't part of the original construction contract. And the second is, this is an opportunity, I think, where we're being inefficient because of siloing. We have 4 buildings in town with alarm systems. I think we have 5 different contracts with alarm companies.
Mhm.
I think we ought to be looking at that. I think the senior center has a separate company for fire alarm and intrusion alarm. And, you know, paying 2 different contracts.
Mhm.
We have Academy Hall, this building, highway department.
Mhm.
It seems to me that we should be looking at this from more than a department level.
I think that's what we're doing with the quotes, trying to, and again, focus them all back into the dispatch
And
center
I
as
didn't even know
well.
there was a water system law.
Well, it wasn't going in.
It didn't work.
Yeah, true.
It just rang in
Really
here,
be
that's
a
all.
problem.
No one can hear it.
Clerical support for highway superintendent, that's been something kicked around. Again, that really needs to be a discussion. You know, is that appropriate for this time of year? Typically we don't,
Yeah, typically not.
but again, Mark is, if we can find a different way to fund it, we can do something there.
Could we use our temporary help
It's
thing
possible.
for?
Sure.
for-
We increase
for a
that quite a
bridge?
bit and, you know, see what
Yeah, I mean,
your
there's-
sister's free, you know.
There's typically a process, you know, in terms of going to
Mhm.
HR or the administrator around a new position, and so this feels very out of that
Yep.
cycle.
Bandwidth, that's coming off. There was enough in the budget. It didn't need to be a special town meeting.
Do you have numbers on any of these yet?
Right now, we're getting a quote. I think Bob said they're coming tomorrow to the, and that's the only one really staying on. The police officer was a request from the chief for Jim Gormley to be authorized to stay on later, which I believe we did a couple years ago
Good
for
for a firefighter.
Right, it was good for-
Yeah.
We
Last
did
year.
Peter last year.
Yeah.
Last year.
benefits we talked about, and then
I'm all
the
in
2
favor of
boiler.
those old guys.
I bet you are. Benefits we talked about, and then, like, of course, the 2 boilerplate ones at the end, the tax rate and the transfer.
When do you expect to have a number on the employee benefits numbers?
He's got a tentative one now, and then we had a potential other
Did you get any
buyback.
information on that other buyback? Is that, did you get
I
an
think-
answer on that?
I think we had an answer, but we didn't get a definite if it's happening.
You know, we had a rough.
Was it? Yeah, because we're looking at $1.25 or something like that, I think.
That much?
Wasn't that what I?
I didn't think so. I thought it was like closer to 90.
Well, if you're talking about the other buyback,
We had 90 on your first list. and then
96, the other
potentially,
was
Which,
about 125, yeah.
yeah, now the papers haven't been put in yet, but you can say, look, put it in there. If he doesn't,
Yeah.
it's there available. I just roll it
Doesn't
back
mean,
out.
yeah.
Right.
It doesn't mean it's spent. So, yeah, I certainly wouldn't.
But in terms of what we're taking, that's the only hard number I have out of the free cash at this point.
Or raise and appropriate. You asked a question, and we moved on before you answered about anything that wasn't on here. I know the land trust is working on a reimbursement for a little under 10,000 for the tree work.
Are they looking for CPC funds for that, or were
The article that I approved for them was raise and appropriate or transfer from free cash. I just heard that this morning,
That tree work issue
Mhm.
is discussed
so
quite a bit.
they are working on that.
Because it's maintenance, or it was presented as maintenance, you couldn't do it as a CPA project.
So there's gonna be a request to add that to the warrant.
I saw them working on a warrant article.
So they'll request the board to add that to the warrant.
I have no
Not
idea.
just
You know what I
putting it
know. They asked for my help
No,
on
that's
wording.
fine, that's fine. Bob, is there a potential for that to be covered under ARPA funding?
Yes. ARPA funding can be used for those communities that have received less than 10 million. You can bunch it all together, and it can be used for any, quote, government services, according to the treasurer. So we're
I
going to
thought we
be
had
using
discussed that
some of
before
them.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
A lot of security system.
Can't you get over 10 million? Well,
And I'm
Well,
gonna
Carter,
say-
Bob,
and I'm gonna
seriously.
say, I'm gonna repeat this again about I'll clean it up. Okay, I don't think we should be up pissing away our ARPA funds on little projects. We should save it for something that's
Mhm.
big and will benefit the town for 10 to 15 years.
What we did with the water.
So I have-
Exactly.
So paying for chopping down a tree that's gonna grow in 3 years is not, like,
I have a report for you tonight regarding that, regarding ARPA funds, where we stand.
All right, let's clean up the special town meeting.
Do we have
I
anything
do-
with CPC coming that we know of? Or is there still room for CPC, somebody to add something?
Typically not.
Well, it'll be up to the board as to whether to add something, but we try to keep the CPA articles to the annual meeting,
Mhm.
unless there's extraordinary circumstances.
Is there something that was coming back from historical after that survey thing? Was there a second part needed?
Not right now from what I'm aware of.
Okay, nothing.
Nothing.
So as Doug said, typically it's not a fall type thing. Is anybody aware of any other needs for the fall? So again, don't have a lot of information. We don't see a lot of needs presented to us at this point besides the one that we identified with employee benefits. Potentially, there might be a need for the insurance account as well, Bob,
Yes.
with some, I don't know if it was not getting quotes beforehand and.
We have another
And the
vehicle.
fact that increasing the vehicle numbers obviously
The
did raise the
liability thing?
numbers.
Yeah, building and liability. We have another vehicle coming on at
well,
the highway
didn't
department.
Barrett, didn't,
We talked about going to Maya.
on the building and liability, didn't, when I suggested we look for someone else, they come back with a quote and promise us that it'll only go up so much this year?
But if we level funded, it's still not.
Don't we have a
And we were
letter to
short
that
last
effect?
year.
I think so.
But we were short last year.
But we increased it to 25,000.
But we were still, anyhow, let's get those hard numbers, you know.
And is there a way we can pursue Dick's suggestion about all these alarm systems?
I think that's a
James
great
working
idea.
on it. I think it's James by getting a quote
Other than
from,
have Shelley get round up a bunch of dogs and put them in each of the buildings?
We
How
know
many
the one
does she
across the
have
street goes
already?
off weekly.
how many does she have
Comments.
already? Yeah, seriously. So,
Well, we can do an RFP and see what,
That sounds like it'd be a
Well, we do
savings,
have this-
right? I mean, if one
We have the same
company did it.
company. Right, Sabula is going to look at all of this.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
So John, just a quick question on timing. So when do you have to finalize the warrant?
We said, I thought, Bob, you sent out the dates that
Why?
we had talked about. When
Right.
we were closing the warrant, we were going to approve, you had a date for your meeting
Well,
already or
we
no?
haven't talked about it because we haven't met, but,
Oh.
you know, typically we're 2 weeks before this, which would be the holiday, which would mean we have to do maybe a Tuesday instead, which is unusual for a public hearing.
See, I thought it's the posting that's 2 weeks, the meeting can be 1 week.
We
But
can do-
the
I
posting
have
is,
to- I gotta look at the bylaw
Yeah.
because it's clear
it's
in
the
there.
posting is 2.
2 weeks posting.
You can have your meeting
We
the
can have
Monday
our-
before.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got nothing to mail.
I think the
So
posting
we can
for
do
your
it-
meeting might be 2 weeks.
Okay.
That might be the thing. So we had, and I gave Bob some
Submit by
dates.
September 19th.
It was the
is what
closing,
he's
right?
requested.
Right. And then we would sign the warrant on the 26th and get it out and posted.
You time by when, John? Sorry.
We're closing the warrant on the 19th. We're going to sign it on the 26th and post it plenty of time before the 24th.
Okay.
Signing on the 19th of September.
Closing on
This is
the
closing
19th,
it.
signing on the 26th. So you could have your meeting on the 17th. It's the 2 weeks before, so that's why we're hitting the 2 weeks by posting in September.
Other than what the land trust may have in mind, I've asked all town departments and department heads and boards and committees to submit article proposals. I've asked them twice now over 2 weeks, haven't received anything.
As I mentioned to Pam, we used to have a typical memo that went out from advisory, well, reinforcing these are emergency requests only. The fall is for financial transactions and something emergency oriented. No.
It wasn't in there. It came from this office to
Right.
say.
Yeah.
just one.
I don't
Good
remember.
thing,
So-
because
so
neither one of
Doug-
us
like, I don't
remember
remember, Doug, did you do that?
Do we do that?
Sure you did, sure you did. Okay.
Good.
So that's where we are.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Tyler, good to see you.
Back.
Hey, Bob.
Stay.
Hmm?
I'm gonna stay.
Somebody's waiting in the waiting room. Chief Andrews. Do you want to admit them? Sorry.
Up to you. Did you vote already?
No, I need to do that. What time?
Twice.
What time is the,
Ambulance, 6:35, so we're a little behind, so take your time.
yeah.
So we have the Park and Rec Committee,
We just did.
such as they are.
Yeah, I just have questions and stuff, and I'll go about something.
Carrie, you're up, you're up. You're up. Hi, Carrie.
Hi,
You have anybody else?
No.
Okay, hi.
just me. So I'm coming for a few reasons,
Mhm.
just to keep everybody up to date on what's going on in Park and Rec. So we are anticipating a resignation. I don't believe we've received it yet, but we have been notified it's probably coming and we have somebody ready for that position. But we're also going to be hosting a pumpkin fest at the park, hopefully October 22nd. Inviting the town to decorate pumpkins in any way they want and bring them down to the park. It's a Saturday morning. Bring them down, we'll set them up and then light them up that evening. And during the day, we want to have a trunk or treat for the community. And so we didn't know if any of the board of selectmen like want to come with a trunk decorated to help.
I'm in.
You don't have a trunk, you have an open Jeep.
I got a tailgate.
Okay, whatever. Now, typically in the past, I mean, Ed Loico did one, the Federated Church used to have a pumpkin thing. Obviously, it moved, I don't know, of the Fed, I mean, touch base with,
I haven't heard of
Okay.
anything, so.
I haven't seen anything in town.
Isn't the
in years.
library
Oh.
doing a Halloween thing?
the
Here.
library does
Here.
plenty,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's for the kids, usually
They
during the
just
day.
do it here during the day for the
Right,
library,
right.
so we're looking at the whole town of
Sounds good.
Very
it.
good.
And talking about doing something closer to the holidays, to the winter. We've kicked around some ideas. Originally, we were talking about maybe doing, almost like a very small version of Bright Nights in the park.
Mhm.
But then when we were talking about it, having inflatables or having things lit up might be hard if it snows and who's gonna dig it out and who's gonna keep that up to snuff. But I talked to Becky about maybe doing a festival of trees and using the senior center for a weekend. And doing something there and coordinating it maybe with when Santa arrives here, maybe we can announce winners at that. Something along those lines. So I was just coming to tell you guys those ideas.
What about a front door
Remember-
decoration?
What?
Front door decorating for Christmas. You heard of that?
I heard house decorating and stuff.
You know, people
Yeah.
register their front door and they can wrap it however they want, like a present
Uh-huh.
or anything like
If
that.
Carrie might remember, we had a holiday house tour for several years in town as well, this is back, you know, maybe 90s, close to that. Yeah. So, but- So when you go back to the Halloween thing, do you know if they're still doing something at the Baptist church for Halloween with the candy or anything like that? And they did a couple drive-through.
They've done a couple things, yeah, but that's all independent from the town, has nothing to do with what.
No, but different
Just
town
one
things,
thing.
the library participated in it, the Lions Club participated in it, we all had. Canned
I know
out.
that
And it wasn't a trunk or treat.
They did do a trunk or treat kind of sort of thing 2 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
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 But I haven't heard anything about that.
Mhm.
And the people I've reached out to haven't seemed to say either, so.
Okay. Well, we're supportive of, all events. I would just suggest you might want to coordinate with the library, because I mean, we don't want to distract
When
them,
I've been
whatever.
talking to the library.
Yeah, that's just during the day for like the daycare kids that they do here.
No, they had a big event before.
Last year they just did that thing inside.
Anyhow, if you're doing costumes, I know what Craig is going to be already, so let's.
I'm sure everybody already knows that. There's no secret there.
So that's all I was coming for, is to give you guys an update on what we were doing.
Great. I can tell you, we have no news on your truck. The only thing we can tell is that Mark has been talking to the dealership. It's not one of the ones they canceled. Of the orders they have, they've canceled a
Well,
bunch,
hey,
but not
that's-
handled.
That's progress.
When's your next meeting, Carrie?
Tuesday.
Next Tuesday?
Yes, yes. So Tuesday at 6.
Great.
All right, so that's all I was coming for, so,
Super.
Great.
We'll look forward to, so you think in 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to be coming to the board for a joint appointment of
yes.
an upcoming resignation? And you alluded to that at the last meeting anyhow, that
And we're just waiting for it to,
formal.
so.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
All right, well, thank you guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Carrie.
you.
We'll see you later.
Next on the agenda is the ongoing,
What is this?
so basically Fish and, is it Fish and Wildlife, whatever state agency, which is too big for their britches,
Fish and wildlife.
says that this is the exact word you must use in your, it's funny, and I gotta say, Don, you're probably more into this, whatever. You look at all the people who privately have done solar fields, and they're spending the most time beating up the town, trying to do one that's actually gonna bring some money back to the town. And since we started this project, it seems like 5 fields have gone in. But they've done so much, I don't say,
Oh, it's a damn restaurant
dragging,
thing.
yeah, exactly.
So
So
what-
basically,
so
it's
what are they
a,
gonna do?
so just do a affirmation of the conservation vote, basically, that we affirm that Concom came before us. And we did agree that, yes, the property will be under their management. Like we said, 5 times. Isn't that a beautiful thing?
I move that we affirm our votes,
That must be the word, that has to be the word used as well.
votes of transferring the land to the Conservation Commission and putting it under their management.
I affirm the motion.
Please,
Second.
are we all in affirmation of that motion? Aye.
Right.
You guys as well? Everybody in the room affirmed that motion. Thank you, Mark. You probably recall good times like that before.
Witnesses,
A former selectman, so you remember, yeah, that happened. Okay, capital projects update.
what do we got?
All ashore is going ashore?
There are 2 proposals. One is for the fire station design from Tecton. And the other is from Ty and Bond for the proposal to look at accessibility at Town Hall and other buildings, and also to give us an estimate for capital improvements that are needed in this building.
Okay.
I don't have the time.
I will.
We have 2 other issues with Ty and Bond, which we decided to put off until later in September, and that is the proposal that they've given us for designing a Main Street sidewalk,
Mhm.
and the proposal that they gave us for
2 other projects.
for the window project. Yes. Those are not on the agenda tonight. but-
Can we start with the fire department assessment? Couple things, we had that meeting last week, and I thought it went pretty well with Jeff, but what did we talk about for, I mean, I feel bad that we just dismissed our meeting with the advisory. What was our plan for funding this?
You had asked if ARPA funds could be used for this, and the
Mhm.
answer is yes.
When we go back to
And-
Don here, this is another
I actually
leaf off the tree.
I actually called Boston on this because federal government, Treasury Department is pushing back on any community that wants to use ARPA funds for capital, just like they won't let you put it into retirement and so forth, stabilization. this would be not a capital investment, but it would be a design for a capital investment. I wanted to make sure that that would be agreeable. I called them and they said yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously,
And so both,
it's a worthy cause, but isn't the funding source that the town really wants
that's
to
the
use?
issue.
Do we want to quickly replace one of the articles we just took off and say this is something? It just delays that funding
I know, Kelly, that's
until
the other
whatever.
thing.
However, Jeff did say, I believe, that wasn't something he could take on, right? Oh, no. He had an
He said he could
immediate
start it.
opportunity,
Yeah.
but then it would get worse.
Right.
As we went later.
Of the projects, the ARPA, I'm going to give you this later on, of the ARPA projects that you've approved, out of the 1.514,
Mhm.
of which we haven't received the last part, unallocated ARPA funds are down to 659, 129.
Right.
So,
We could take it 2 steps down. We could approve ARPA funding and still put a warrant article on. By the time the bill comes due, if the town approved it, we would just negate the ARPA expenditure, replacement with the free cash expense.
Yeah, I think we gotta move forward. We gotta get this done.
If it's open, it's open. Like I say, if I don't mind doing the 2-step approach
Yeah,
too, 'cause to me, it's.
What do we have
worthy
left in
people
ARPA
to-
funding?
He just said 6 something.
6 something?
Yeah.
And this is what, $28,000 total?
If we
No,
do the
this is-
second
If we do
half,
both
it's
phases.
only the
Here's-
first right
here's-
now, but.
We're only
I
doing
was
the
going to
first-
give you this
we're doing-
later on, but it has
Yeah.
the
We're
numbers
only
here.
doing 12,000 now, 12,000.
Right, I'm just thinking worst case scenario, we want me to stay
Well,
with 2.
that's the other thing too.
The
I
top
mean,
ones are ARPA projects that the Board of Selectmen has approved.
That brings a good rationale for doing ARPA funding, because you're gonna have the question come up, okay, how are you paying for the second part? And if you've done town meeting for one, you'd feel like you
You
should
have to
do it for the second,
Yeah.
which we won't have that ability for.
Right.
So I would say we'd authorize
And now
both.
we're into a number down where you say, well, this is not nickel and diming, okay, now we're talking about 30-something thousand that we,
I mean, I think if we make a decision relatively soon, we could ask that this work be done during the cold months and let us get our decision made sometime in late winter as to whether to stay here and invest or to move. And if we're going to stay here and invest, get the capital project ready and bid for the town meeting in the spring,
for a fire station. Fire station.
or the town hall as well.
Well, right now, just on the fire station thing, so is it the understanding for the board that we're interested in going ahead with Tecton, giving them the task 1 and paying for it from ARPA? How does I see the fire department present, how do you guys feel about that? You were there for the presentation, Ed.
Either way, the board feels is adequate way that they want to go about funding it.
No, just, I mean, funding is kind of on us. How do you feel about moving ahead with the Tecton?
Well, he's done, Wilbraham, he's had experience with remodels, he's in talks with Munson as well. I think he's very familiar with our area.
Mhm.
I think he had some good out of the box ideas, suggestions, and I think it'd be a great idea to go with.
The numbers, by the way, are on the other side. This is printed 2 sides. On the other side are town project numbers.
Okay. So I'll take a motion
So
to
the
authorize the
Tecton
town
design is-
administrator to execute task 1 with Tecton Architects funding to be provided from ARPA.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bob? Thank you. Second project on the horizon is assessing this building. Peter, how are you?
Hey, how you doing? Like me to say more?
Yeah, that's it. Man, in a few words,
So what I did today is I brought 2 distinguished gentlemen,
more. Hi, Peter.
Peter Malinsky,
Yeah,
Guy and
for the
Bond.
camera.
For the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so Pete Papineau, he is a principal architect at Guy and Bond,
Mhm.
and Craig French, he's the structural manager and the architectural manager. So those folks are really speaking to this particular project.
Mhm.
I'm really just a free face.
Okay. I'd like to really just, again, for the camera, go over our needs. And I'm gonna kick this over to Craig, because Craig has kind of been, he got an assessment done in 17. And Craig's had some concerns that maybe it didn't go far enough. And we want to make sure that if we do this again, we're really hitting everything we want to do. Terrific.
I'm just looking to see what we can do for this building as far as not just ADA. I think our study back then was all ADA related. And back then we had the police station down here, so we had some remodeling stuff. But obviously we know this building's got some structural issues. It's got mechanical issues, electrical issues, ventilation issues. We have a lot of issues in this building that I want to make sure if we're looking to fix this building, that we're not breaking the bank and pricing ourselves out of this building. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to get out of a study.
Toes the nose.
Toes to nose, yeah. We need, like, I don't buy a car, I'm gonna bring it to a mechanic, and he's gonna take the tires off, he's gonna look at the brakes, he's gonna look at the fluids, he's gonna tell me, what do I need to make this car last another 150,000 miles?
Yeah, I
What
guess
are we gonna get here for the next 40
I
years?
guess what you're looking at is sort of comparing, if you rebuild this building or revamp this building versus maybe building a whole new town office building.
Right, and I necessarily don't know if I need you guys to tell us what a new building's gonna cost us. I think I need to know what this building's gonna cost us. And then we could be like, well, that's gonna be way too much, and we should go to phase 2 and see what a new building's gonna cost.
And you're
Which we know is gonna be
Way
substantial.
too much.
And you're familiar with the other thing, we have the 30% rule. All of a sudden you touch the value is not that high, so you do 30% of the work, you're obligated towards ADA at that point, which we've been able to, I would say skirt, but we've been able to move the focus from here to there. But that will come up if you do any serious work.
What point we
Because
see door
Bob, the
frames,
value of the building
door knobs,
is
and-
what?
Oh.
I mean, we have a number, but I mean, we're not talking it's a $300 building. I think it's-
Yeah, what is the assessed value?
Bob has that. but
I
it's
have
not
it, I
you.
don't have it
Okay.
handy.
Yeah.
Right, and in order to receive grant funds from the State Office of Disabilities, we need to have a plan that looks at not just the town hall, but the outlying buildings as well. I don't think we have any issues at the police department in terms of accessibility. I think the senior center is mostly accessible.
Mhm.
We are doing a project at the highway garage, and presumably we'll be doing the project at the fire station. So I don't know that there's a lot of work involved there. The work is here. And the pressing need, which the building commissioner tells me regularly, is to have handicap access to this level of the building with an elevator, which we don't have.
Mhm.
So, but I'm sure there are other issues.
And is that feasible? I mean, yeah, it's a need, but feasible. So you have a proposal.
46,000.
How long will it take? What type of access do you need? Stuff like that.
Fair question. We'll lean over here.
Sure, I mean, access as much as you can give us.
Mhm.
I mean, in a building like this, with all the finishes on it, it's tough to see the guts of the building, the structure of the building. But you can tell if there are areas that are sagging, stress, cracks, things like that you can find. And getting to what you're looking for, I think at the end of the report, or at the end of our evaluation, we'll look at everything that we can. I think we've included pretty much every discipline, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural, architectural. So we'll give you a report that covers everything. And generally, we break down our prices into 3 categories. And I think in this report, in this proposal, we did immediate, short-term and long-term, or usually it's good, fair, and poor. But however it breaks down, you get an overall cost, and then it'll be broken down into thirds. So what we feel like you need to address right now, what you should address in the next, say, 5 to 6 years or 10 years, and then what's sort of long-term maintenance stuff that you can put off for a while. And so the immediate costs are what you're looking at basically right now. If you want to stay in the building, if you want to improve the building, depending on the scale of that project, may or may not trigger the 30% handicap accessibility requirements. Certainly, probably by the next phase, say 2/3 of the work, that will trigger it. Because of course, in the existing building code, if you do multiple projects within a period of time, 3 years, it counts as the same project. So,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, depending on how you scale the projects back, you may be able to get away with the first project before you have to do it, but certainly by the second.
My question goes to your limitations on page 5. I'm worried about a couple of them because it seems like some of these we should want. I mean, I have a set of drawings of the building that's hand-drawn from, I think, the last renovation done, Bob Berger did with the chair back in 82, ballpark like that. Should we have more up-to-date drawings? I mean, I'm sure you guys wouldn't mind having them, but they should be on CAD. If your draftsman
Pretty
even
good,
have pencils
but you have a
anymore.
pretty good set of drawings.
We do, but they're not CAD. Should they
They're
be
not
up to date?
CAD.
Right. Material sampling. I'm concerned because we have done remediation in this building in the past. With the hallway, and I think we had to have a guide come in and look over something like that. Should that be part of it? It can't be wicked expensive, but maybe, I mean, it seems like all the tile work we have here in a building dating from back in, the 30s, 40s, looking it over for hazardous materials, I think should be included. My thing. But the load capacities of existing members, that's, now that we're talking about putting a third floor in, so maybe that's not a thing, but is that something you would skip normally?
Normally, yes, for this level of inspection,
Okay.
yes, because we're really just doing a conditions assessment, not a load capacity check. Like if
Yeah.
you were gonna store books on the second floor or whatever, then yeah,
We
you
do.
wanna know.
Oh, we
you
do.
There's a library there.
I'll keep my eyes closed. But, I mean, if you're concerned that the floor is overloaded, then that's something that we can.
Not so much that, but I mean, when Bob talks about putting an elevator in, that would be a structural thing.
Well, yeah, but that would be so that the elevator, I mean, unless you're gonna put it within the building, usually when you add an elevator to an existing building, it gets tacked onto the side of the building, so you're not blowing out a hole through the entire side of the building, you're just making accesses.
Our building commissioner has a location for it in the building.
Yeah, we
so-
have.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's, the thing is though, I've done that before as well, and I think especially if the building is constructed in wood, you can conceivably do that relatively simple, you don't have to. It's
Okay.
not a total.
I have to say, when the last time we looked over this, Tom Kuchar kind of picked out a location inside the structure for it, but he was like,
Well, they're not structural engineers, so they don't wanna do that.
don't be
My
putting Tom,
concern-
don't be putting Tom down.
No, I love Tom.
Yeah, Jeez.
My concern about the mechanical structure and stuff like that is just looking at the front wall of the building, it's like this, and it's cracking and pulling away. So I would want to have some type of structural integrity
Right.
expertise looked at that, just to make sure that it's either a facade issue, or do we have a serious load carrying problem in the front of the building?
Right, I mean, if you look at the
It's
tiles in
hanging
the
out.
front auditorium, they're coming off and leaning back this way.
Yeah, there's,
and then-
it's like a 3-degree lean.
Yeah, so I mean, so as part of our evaluation, we would obviously look at that and provide some conceptual repair alternatives, right? So this is what we think you could do to fix
Mhm.
the facade. Like I said, this first phase is just sort of an evaluation. We give you the list of everything that we found wrong with the building and what we feel like it would take to fix it and the costs, obviously, that's what we really want to get to, is how much it's gonna cost.
Well, we got a Fisher cut bait here. We've been kicking down, you've been on the board, 3 years, and this has been on your agenda for as long as you've been here. So we got a Fisher cut bait. This is not an unreasonable number.
Yeah.
Again, it's ARPA qualified. It's something I think, in this type of project, you would coordinate with the town administrator, but also the building inspector, because you want to talk to a peer who understands what's going on. And look for an affirmation, if you will, from the board. Is it affirmation? You think that one?
That's fair.
That's what I was gonna say.
As much as it pains me, I'll move that we approve this ARPA funds.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor? You're just spending like crazy tonight.
John, we certainly could provide a proposal to do some HVMA work. I don't think it's extraordinary amount. Some of it may be related to the plans to do window work as well, so there's gonna have to be some HVMA work ultimately done.
You know what? I'm gonna ask for a motion for ARPA funding not to exceed, I'm gonna call it 60,000 right now. That'll give us the ability, if he comes back with an extra 2,000 for a thing, we're all set. Would you be okay with that?
Yeah, so move.
Okay.
Before that, just building code review, wouldn't it be the job to review the building code, or is that, you have to?
You pretty much have to.
So why is that a limitation?
Well, we're not doing a design for the building yet.
Okay.
Typically, if you want that to be included, you'd be able to do that, but at this point, we're not doing a design. It's warranted construction documents. In order to proceed with construction documents in your building renovation work, the building commissioner is going to require that the building evaluation be provided.
We're amending the motion for it not to exceed 60.
All right, second.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, it's 60, not 50. 60,
Yeah.
so,
Don't take that as a blank check, Peter.
yeah.
I'm good, I'm good. But if you have a moment, maybe you should ask what the questions are related to, go with some questions relative to the windows. I know you're putting them off to another meeting, but it's.
Yeah, I hate to say it only because we have a bunch of people waiting in the hallway
There's nobody in the hallway anymore.
and what?
There's nobody in the hallway anymore.
Yeah, they're there.
Yeah,
Oh, they're down the hall.
oh, yeah, they're there. It's all about the ambulance. And it's a hot button thing, so I know you drove out here and just, I apologize, but yeah, we would like to talk about the window and the sidewalk thing.
Sidewalk is a side
That's
issue.
on
There'll
for
be
next
someone
week?
else coming to talk about that. But
So,
windows.
Quickly about the window, it's just my quick concern is that, I want to say it was kind of an off-the-cuff thing, and perhaps it was. But, and we got a grant from the state, and gosh, that's wonderful. But $17,000 a window, it's a great window. I'm not sure if it's spread shade with the stained glass doing it from the guy in Commercial Drive, but can we review that again? First off, maybe as part of the assessment, it might be, oh my gosh, these really weren't, rather than just walking around and counting the windows, oh, there's a bit of an air leak, there's a bit of a whatever, and really, maybe walk back and
2 minutes
see.
on that, okay? Can I touch on that real quick?
Yes.
I mean, part of my, I was asked by Peter to try and assist with this when we were putting together the numbers for you. And I guess for me, it's a matter of to what degree are you looking for the restoration of the windows? There are numerous ways of approaching it, where you're keeping the window frame in place because the window frame is in reasonable shape. You're restoring the window, you're storing the components, painting it, putting it back together so they're operational.
Yeah.
If you want to get insulating glass, a lot of times you grab it, the actual sash itself, install the insulating glass in the pane.
But I think it goes back to, here we are buying a new car, and the first question really was, gee, the ashtray was full, and we got a new car coming. And I think we go back to it, Bob had a question from the library director, hey, we got a bit of an air draft up here, can we do something about it? And now we got all new car, and maybe that wasn't where we needed to go. So let's go back and find out what the problem is first, before we design a solution that may not fit the problem.
I think we're,
But I have to say also, the legislation, which we got the money,
Mhm.
also says for ADA.
And what happened, I mean,
What's
to
got to
be,
do with windows?
Well, they put in the replacement of windows at the Hammer Library, at the Town Hall, and ADA improvements.
Okay,
So,
one-handed windows?
well, no, what I'm saying is if they,
You could target the money
if
elsewhere,
if it costs
yeah.
$200,000 to do the windows, then we got $300,000.
Yeah.
We can get $300,000 to put in the
Well,
elevator.
let's go back and figure out what the problem is first before we automatically assume this is the solution. You may not have gotten everything as a directive at the beginning.
Absolutely.
Right.
no,
so-
in fairness on this, I got the call from our legislator,
Mhm.
and they said, we're putting earmarks into the government bond. Do
Mhm.
you have anything? And remember, we had talked. So I called Tyne Bond and I said, can you give me something quick? How much time do we have? I said, 2 days.
Mhm.
So they came out and did.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it happened.
Oh, yeah.
let's roll back a little bit to the study we're doing on the building. Was that gonna encompass the windows too? Because I have a real hard time swallowing spending all this money on windows when we don't even know the outcome of a study yet.
Right.
So will the study encompass
You're gonna be looking at windows.
availability of windows? I mean, it's part of structural
That would make
mechanical, right?
sense. That would make
Yeah,
sense.
it's part of the,
Yeah.
part of the architecture.
And
So
let's go back to the thing. First off, if it was a bit of a air gap or something like that, as Craig said, defer that, because what's the worst that could happen? the heating bill goes up a bit, we spend an extra $100 on heating, but we haven't gone out and done something that didn't need to be done because we don't know the other story yet. So maybe we figure out what the problem is first before we design a solution.
Understood.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and exactly to your point, part of the evaluation will be architectural building envelope, so we'll review the roof, the doors, windows, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think that's probably the best way to do it. If you don't have to spend the money on windows, is if we do our evaluation, and we'll give you the list of the windows that we feel like should be replaced or upgraded, and then we'll go from there.
Honestly, I think the ones in the auditorium are worse than the library ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Great.
Okay.
Gentlemen, thank you for
Thank you
coming
very
out
much.
tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If we have funds remaining, we can address the issues in the auditorium.
What do you mean? Want those
You
for
said
the windows?
you were saying that you think the windows in the auditorium are
You mean the
worse than-
500,000 is just the law?
No. We're gonna address the large windows upstairs, and then we can look at the other windows as well, because I think we're gonna have enough money.
I thought those were part of the count already. That's even worse. Okay, so next we have the ambulance committee, I
Yeah,
believe.
let's put them in there. Let's get this one there, please. I mean, this is a big deal.
Is the game on soon? Want home for that vacuum?
Thursday, right? Thursday night? Thursday night?
Hey, Heather, good to see you again.
We're back to the ambulance bid?
Over a seat.
Oh,
How much Jim's got?
almost outnumbered by extra
Didn't
board
sit
members.
there.
Boy, you get one more. Is there anybody, Dwayne down?
We
posted it.
Did you? Is there a club?
Yeah.
You lost a member this week. So, you know.
Yeah, I know, that was sad.
Yeah. How many, you want to guess how many are in that club now?
No, I never thought about
10.
it. Okay.
Going back to Art. And Judy.
Yep.
So we have the ambulance committee here. Who wants to give us a quick update of where we stand? Bob?
When we learned that the city of Holyoke was going to contract with Cataldo, I called the president of Action Ambulance in Wilmington, Mass, and said, what implications will this have for the town of Hamden? He said, we don't quite know. We have to do some planning. We'll contact you when we have the planning done. Today, actually, it was over the weekend, he said to me, we'd like to come and talk. And so I didn't really respond, but they appeared today. They came in today for an impromptu meeting, president of Action, as well as the two new employees, management people, who are replacing Frank and Rock, and introduced them as well. And he said, we have every intention of continuing to serve the town of Hamden. He said, in fact, you're going to get a rebate this year from the contribution that we made of $333,000. We have established a new base on Page Boulevard in Springfield, and we'll be able to serve you. We believe we'll be able to serve you as effectively as we have in the past. They're going to continue to serve Hadley. They think they have some prospects for other communities in our region, and they intend to continue serving Holland, Wales, and Brimfield. Although I've been hearing some rumors that Holland, Wales, and Brimfield are concerned, and they were looking to take some joint action. Contract is up in October in Holyoke, and they intend to continue and to continue providing good service. And I guess we'll approach the Board of Selectmen in the spring for another contract.
Well, I would think that it'd be more winter than spring.
Yeah, we gotta do it early. We wanna get
Proactive
it,
on
we wanna
that.
get it for the town meeting, you know, we wanna do that.
Some discussion.
We also have the ability to extend our contract by 1 year.
We do.
For the next 2 years.
We do. I just, I listened to them and said, I'm sure that they'll make a decision based on your ability to continue serving the town well.
Well, we have a contract, so we should stick with the contract. We got 8 months left to that.
If they can. So you say there's gonna be a rebate. Is this part of the 15-month recap or something?
This is a new year.
Right, so
We
we're gonna
we
recap.
didn't get a rebate the first year.
Right,
He said to me that this year, we're going to be getting a rebate.
How do we know that? I
Well,
haven't seen any numbers,
said,
though.
well, the president told me this, and he said that they're doing a lot of business, frankly, with East Long Meadow. And you know how the contract works, when they reach a certain level of revenue, they share with the town above that.
right, so
Well,
when
the
was that,
so that-
when is that meeting typically scheduled? I know it's like,
October, is it
October,
October? Yeah,
November.
Right, November?
October.
Yeah.
in the meeting last year in October, November, didn't show a surplus. and
Did
we got
not,
nothing.
no, did not.
No, I think part of that
Part of
was,
it, yeah.
I think part of that was because of the whole pandemic thing,
Yeah.
that people weren't being transported, they
Right.
didn't wanna be transported. I
Customers
think
were
that-
down.
It was
Huh?
COVID.
Customers were down.
Customers, it's the same,
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't wanna go to the hospital, even though
Right.
they probably needed to, because they didn't wanna get COVID.
In the main part of the COVID epidemic, I was told that their business was off 48%,
All
but
that
it
is
has
good.
improved.
And they're still gonna maintain that if the ambulance is transporting someone, they'll send a backup,
Yes.
ALS.
And they'll send, yes, and they'll send the backup out of Page Boulevard.
Which has not been happening lately, and we've got some concerns about that.
And we talked about that, and they said, we have that fixed. That there was a problem with hiring. They said by the way, it's a generalized problem.
Yeah, everyone's had, I was
in
reading an article about,
Massachusetts.
about Cataldo, they just raised their pay for $25 an hour, because they can't get anybody to work at the ambulances.
You can't take another career down, forget it.
I could do it, I've been trying to reinvent myself.
They're confident that they can continue, that we will not have the interruptions that we've had in the last couple of weeks.
Mhm.
Partly because when there's an uncertainty about whether or not they would keep their contract in Holyoke,
Mhm.
which was their home base. Why would anyone want to go to work for them? Concerned that it would be a short-term employment, so,
All right, so he came and presented this to you.
yes.
Right. When will he be able to come and present, or his new people present this to the ambulance committee, who are hearing this for the first time, same as the board of selectmen? I assume, Donna, you would like to schedule a meeting, obviously, for your board.
We could do
I
our,
would,
our quarterly meeting. In fact, we've been talking about putting together a quarterly meeting. And we decided to hold off until we got a decision on Holyoke
Hmm.
and,
I do
see what-
think, I'm sorry,
no, that's,
I do think that one thing we need to be cognizant of is with the turnover in personnel and maybe staff going to Cataldo, that there is, if you look in the contract 7B, the police chief approves any staff that comes to work in town. So I think we want to be just mindful and keep an eye that we do have our ALS, our paramedic level with a BLS, and that these resumes.
I think it's in the contract too, that they provide one ALS and one BLS.
Right.
Yeah, it's in the beginning.
But we want to make sure those resumes are supposed to be approved before they come to work in town. So I think we want to get out in front of that in advance of this October 1st.
Donna, are you saying also a bit of I don't want to say because of a bit of a hiring crunch? Are you worried there are some shortcuts in the Corey background process as well, or is that a consideration? That
It's all-
typically should only be the
It's all part
companies.
of what Scott should
Yeah.
be reviewing, and I
Right.
think we just need to make sure that we take that step.
Mhm.
That's what I'm saying, because if our staffing came from Holyoke, and now these Holyoke personnel are gonna be working for Cataldo, that means you can only assume that we're gonna have some new folks in town,
Okay.
which per the contract requires resume approval. So we just need to,
Right, I mean, Scott, have you been Has there been any reviewing of people that work there now? No.
Over the last 2.5 years.
Prior, and prior to becoming
Yeah, I
chief,
don't know
is
if
it?
the previous chief had any
Yeah.
involvement.
Have you seen any reporting, monthly reporting?
I have not.
Not since you've been chief? One other issue too.
Yeah, so again, these
Most
are
of my-
some
From
of
my
the,
understanding, everything was going through Donna. and
The monthly
Not involved.
reporting should be current,
It is
the
current.
monthly, you know,
Yeah.
that should all be current, the
well,
emails.
where
are
is
you-
it?
Are you getting the email? Well, Bob should have them.
I have, well, after the controversy a month ago, they filed all the monthly reports that we were entitled to.
Did they
And I
also-
have them, and I certainly was going to share them again with the ambulance oversight committee when we have our next
Do
meeting.
they also have explanations of calls over 10 minutes? Because I had asked them for those reports too.
We are getting those
The
reports,
emails come
we're
daily.
receiving those reports
From
now.
daily to who?
Every day, I receive it. We've had one instance, I believe,
I think
since,
there's been a couple since
uh,
we've getting emails, but there was
I-
one document that went back as far as they could, that listed
Yeah.
everything.
they provided, yeah.
So these are supposed to be shared with the whole committee or with the police chief, and it sounds like Scott's not getting anything, he's not getting
Right.
monthly reports.
Well,
Scott,
actually,
when was last time you got a monthly report?
When I first became chief, I think in July of, I became chief in March, then around July, I think I got a report
Of this year?
last year.
Last year.
And this board of selectmen are supposed to be notified any calls over 10 minutes. And I think as of their June meeting, there was like 10 calls over 10 minutes.
over the course of how long?
During that look back period that we had back in June with them.
Year.
No, I think it was a 4-month period at that time.
If the selectmen would like to be added to the list, I'll just let them know tomorrow, and we pop out a daily email. And since the time we discussed all this, and there was some unhappiness expressed, they have faithfully provided in 7 days a week a report that typically says no incidents over 10 minutes. And the one instance that I'm aware of, that I remember at least, where they were over 10 minutes, they provided an explanation.
Well, the best thing to do, rather than beating up our inboxes with excess email, no, that's fine. Save them in the OneDrive. Make a folder on their ambulance reports, put them in the OneDrive, and the board can look at them at any
Okay.
time, whatever, and that's,
They are
seems
there.
easier.
By
Don,
the
are
way,
you able to get on?
they're in the OneDrive.
Are you able to get online yet, or?
Yeah,
You are now?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I did post them in the OneDrive. They're all there.
So, and then
Where,
is
what are
there,
they under though? Because
Ambulance Advisory Committee.
okay. Does the chief have access to the OneDrive?
He
Is
does
that
not.
something we can
The
set
only
up?
ones who have access to the OneDrive are the three of you, plus me and Pam.
But aren't folders also set up in permissive way, so you can set up?
I can set up a permissive situation so that the
You can
chief can
see
have
that,
access to that.
Now, I thought the fire chief also was included.
It should
I
be.
thought
It
so
should
as
be
well.
included
Right.
in.
Yeah.
in most of this.
So I know you have is it once a week or once a month we have Barim now?
We have
Once a month.
Once a month,
once a month, what?
once a month
Barim.
for Barim.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
So if
we-
that's
we-
something we can, make sure you review with him,
Yeah.
if there's a way they can tunnel into the permissive areas. The chief should have access to all reports on the OneDrive, etc., things like that.
I
Whether
think
it's
they
through the
get just
VPN
folder
or-
access to that folder.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the way we have
the way we're
set it
set up
up
on there.
in
Right.
the past.
Okay. It sounds like a lot of things happening with the ambulance committee and gonna be busy, obviously, for the fall, because they're looking forward to reviewing the action, if you will, with their change of personnel and what's gonna happen with an extension or a whole new, contract as needed. Or is there due diligence in saying, hey, we need to beat the bushes again and see what the best choices are for the town of Hampton? Could be.
I think we need to be aware of cost increases. The
Mhm.
last 2 years, they've gone up 3%. We know with town employees, we were giving 5%. So what is their increase gonna look like?
Right.
We did not discuss that today.
Right.
But I assume that they'll want additional funding
Mhm.
in a new contract.
Mhm.
So,
And when they said we're gonna get a reimbursement though, I mean, how are they gauging that off of? Because I don't think we're averaging more than a call a day right now, so how are we getting reimbursed on that aspect?
It's the revenue, it's not the calls, it's the revenue.
Yeah.
So if they're getting calls from Wilbraham or East Long Meadow, that revenue accrues to us.
Okay.
But it may not show up as calls, as Hamden calls.
Also the type of
And
calls
it-
too, wouldn't it, Tom? If they had all Medicare calls or all Fallon calls, well,
Right.
that increases the
Right,
revenue.
right. Depends where they taking the person to.
Right.
I have to say, there was minimal disappointment in losing Holyoke, because what I was told today was that most of the calls were Medicaid calls, and we all know what happens there, and Medicaid decides on a much lower amount, and so in terms
That was
of,
900.
Medicare is like $250.
Medicare is
And start the
250.
part for that.
So
I'll sign up now. Let's go.
they took me, when I had to go, they took out my Medicare card right away.
You should have.
And they called you.
AAA, yeah, what do you
And I
say?
said, oh, they said, forget it,
Costco.
we're too busy, call Uber.
All right, so what's our plan of action here? Again, we thank the committee for, are you on the committee, Jim?
No, I just had a question.
Would you like to be?
If I may.
No, would you like to be?
Oh, I don't think so.
You walked in, come on, you know that had to happen.
No, I just, as you may recall, I asked at the town meeting if we had received any reimbursement from this, because I was wondering if it really was coming about the way it had been sold to us and the way that we planned and contracted it. So that was a question, I think Bob kind of answered part of that in his dialogue. So that was my biggest question was, are we seeing the revenue stream that we expected to see, or do we anticipate seeing it? And then just out of curiosity, whatever happened to the ambulance, the fire department, is that being used at all? Dave?
No, it's not being used as parked at the station. It is certified by the state, inspected. It could be used on a couple weeks' notice, but it's currently just sitting.
Is it transporting it, or is it BLS and shit?
It's BLS. It's ready to transport. We just have to set up a billing company first.
You could BLS can transport,
Yeah,
right?
we're already a BLS licensed provider.
Okay.
So this would be just.
Yeah, I saw that on their website. That's good, sure.
well, I recall that when we were looking for an ambulance company to replace AMR, the other competitors were interested in the town paying upwards of $750,000 annually. Action came in with a bid of, I believe, $330,000. And quite frankly, I was very pleased because we went to bid when I was the town manager in Ipswich. Action got the bid. They actually rebated the entire amount that we paid them. And I thought, well, there's a good chance that that'll happen here, but circumstances are somewhat different because we don't have the senior housing population that, we had in Ipswich, which provides a lot of the revenue for the ambulance. But, so I was surprised to hear today,
Ironically enough.
I was surprised to hear today that we are going to get a rebate of sorts. I don't have the number yet, so.
Yeah, that was a question that I had.
COVID was a really negative impact on the healthcare industry
Yeah.
across the board.
Yeah,
When people came in, they were really sick.
we will make it public when we get an answer on that. So,
And just to go back, there's 2 one-year options.
Correct. Yep. So 1 year twice. But that's the question though, what is the rates gonna be for those 1 year options? I don't think we'll be locked in as what we're paying now. So that's to be a good question for you guys to kind of hammer out, see what the next steps forward, and does it make financial sense?
First off, where does the rebate come back to is kind of the question I have. Is this something that we just doing a recap sheet, is this?
They would cut a check to the treasury and it would go into the general fund by law and it
Next
would
year?
flush out the free cash next year.
Next year. Interesting. I would suggest that you schedule that meeting earlier rather than later. I mean, waiting until October, November. Yeah. Yeah, and again, the same thing, and we talked about this before, the 5 o'clock meeting, I think can be inconvenient for some people, Bob. You know, this is a real committee. You know, they need to be 6:30, 7, let people get there from work, stuff like that. I know you like hanging around late at night. You love that, and so does Chief and Chief, but, you know, this is it's a public meeting. Having it at 4 or 5 in the afternoon, just, I don't know, I don't like the optics, you know? I know you want a cot here, Bob.
I'm fine with that, I really am.
Hey, if we have to cancel our meeting so you can have this meeting.
We
Don is
can
doing
do
it.
that,
Yeah.
we can do that.
So we want to thank, yeah, really, we want to thank the ambulance committee for your service, really. Thank you all. So,
Who else is on the committee that's not here? Anybody?
Lori Beth, I think, is one, right?
She is still, I looked at the list today.
Yeah.
I do not have a resignation from her, but I don't think we've
But she works,
seen her at
does
the
she work in
meetings.
Boston or something like that, I think? So I think that, or, you know,
I didn't get a response. I sent an email today, I did not get a response.
all right, so we appoint Jim to her spot, I understand. Thanks for coming in.
Jim, you're in.
Second.
Raise your right.
That'll learn you. Eva's right upstairs, one look.
My phone's ringing.
All right, anything else for the ambulance committee? Chief? 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 All right, great.
Very good.
Jim,
No, I had 2 questions and answered them
still thinking about it? Phone still ringing?
all. Yeah, phones, text messages.
All right, thank you all. Okay. So we do have an executive session scheduled about an hour ago, right? But we have a couple
Yeah, a
things
couple things
before
on
that. So we have a request for a kitchen establishment. Craig,
You have the permit over there.
I do have the permit somewhere here. For Ingrid Schwabi. Did you ever meet Walter Schwabi in Corner Village? Yeah. Daughter.
Was his daughter?
Yeah.
Mr. Schwabi's daughter?
You know that, with that house by the rock, you know. Yeah.
Does Mrs. Schwabi's daughter have her health inspection and
She does.
Yeah, so indulgence by Ingrid.
her home occupation?
What? That's going in front of the planning board next week, the one I'm told, but up per Board of Health, she's been checked out by our health agent, got the passing grade, so as far as Board of Health is concerned, she meets all the criteria.
But she can't open until she has that, so we can go ahead and give her the thing, and she'll.
We can give her a
hold it
contingency
on
on
all other.
home occupancy, home occupation.
So she's getting all her ducks in a row right now,
Yep.
basically.
Yeah,
All right,
she came down right away and filed all the paperwork necessarily to get.
bring your samples.
I did not see any samples,
So
although,
she's been advertising on Facebook for months.
Mhm.
yeah, one of those situations, unaware of what needs to be done, you know.
So we're gonna.
Yeah.
She's taking stuff.
So I mean,
You're looking
everything's
for
been-
a vote to do
So-
it, subject to all things being,
Subject to planning board
like we
approval.
do with the firefighters. You can't be until you get all your training done, stuff like that. Boom, boom.
Make the motion.
Make a motion to grant the kitchen permit, thank you. Permit to operate a residential kitchen establishment for indulgence by Ingrid at 128 Thresher Road, subject to all other town requirements and permits being applied and approved.
Second.
All fair?
Right.
Aye.
And it expires, well, go for the next 3 months anyhow.
Yeah.
Drop your pen?
Yeah. See, I usually grunt on the way down, way back up. You know, so.
I go in both directions now.
Water service agreement, to again, another thing just to, so we have a slight modification, Craig, so this is to put it in compliance with the district, basically?
Yeah, the Scannick Valley Water District, all all rules and regulations will be purview of the Scannick Valley Water District. There's a booklet that went out to all residents. Everybody should have the booklet and all the rules.
For the cake. Okay. So
We already voted on
So
this.
you
we
guys-
voted on this, just up to date.
Yeah, it's just a
Okay, great.
revision.
Yes,
Okay.
I've been in contact with Jane,
Mhm.
I need to.
Put this to bed.
Okay.
All right, first, town administrator report.
Okay, in the interest of time, I'll do this quickly.
Yeah, no
We've already
problem.
talked about the news
Your
from Action
copies, Paul?
Ambulance.
I'd be a cop. I don't.
I do.
Yeah.
We're moving ahead with the shared conservation agent. Most recent meeting, we agreed that the target date would be January 1.
Mhm.
We're all aware of the water main break that occurred here. We're fortunate that Jane Bedenkowitz was nearby and came and prevented a more serious flooding. We are hooking up the security system so that it will provide the alarming that will be available to the fire department when, if it occurs again. Commission on Disabilities met on the 29th. We discussed the impending application, which I put in today for some funding for the plan that we need to do. And one of the challenges is going to be, we're going to provide funding for Ty and Bond to do this project from ARPA. We well may get funding from the Commission on Disabilities for this as well. I've asked them for $50,000. The Rural Streets Grant, I don't know if you're familiar with this. Commonwealth has decided that they want to provide guidance for people in rural areas because there have been a lot of accidents. And they are actually going to supply those digital electronic signboards. Really? To the town, yes, for those 4 locations. And Mark would like to use the one that attaches to the speed limit sign, which I'm sure you've seen.
And solar.
Some on Stony Hill too.
Solar power.
You can see what you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
Okay.
I'm driving too fast typically to see exactly what the signs.
Just a
I
suggestion.
blew by that too fast to see what the sign said.
So which ones are they giving out?
Pardon?
Are they giving out the ones that go on the pole or the other ones?
Either one.
Oh, wow.
Mark is recommending the one that goes
Yeah.
on the speed limit sign.
Ones that won't
Tougher to
break?
steal.
Ones that won't break?
Yeah.
The ones that don't break.
Yeah.
And you don't have to transport them around.
Yeah.
Don't have to register them either.
Save on insurance.
Right.
Great.
Okay, and the fiber optic speed is going to be increased to 100
150.
Yes?
150.
I'm sorry, 150. And we also want to bring up the request to install a traffic mirror opposite Southwood entrance, Stony Hill Road. That came up today in an email. And again, I'm working with boards and committees. The next step, I think, in terms of what we file on the website is that in the website calendar, when we post on that calendar, we should also include the agenda for that meeting. And so what I'm hoping is, if you want to go and see, well, what selectmen meeting is coming up next, you can go to that, and right there, it'll also give you a copy of the agenda.
They use post
Which
the
is what
attachment.
which is what ours always has been.
The other ones don't.
But we talked about that at the meeting, because it's a 2-step. You have to do it with the posting,
Yeah.
and then you have to upload the agenda separately.
Right, correct.
And
correct.
again, same thing, I want to focus.
Yep.
Put them up as PDFs,
Yep.
not doc files.
PDFs, oh, yes.
Right.
And lastly, I've been working on this, and I wanted to give it to you. It's not really complete yet. This is a list of all the projects that are being discussed, are underway, how they're funded. We've got 3 levels of funding. We've got ARPA-funded projects, we've got grant-funded projects, and on the other side, we've got town-funded projects, the big ones. I still need to get some data, particularly on the town-funded projects. You'll note that the number that we're using
for the highway garage project does not include the optional items. It only has 474. But I finished this about 5 minutes before you came tonight, so I need to add in those other items. And just thought you might like to know the cost, the funding source, whether or not it's approved, whether or not there's design done, if in fact design is required, whether or not we've gone out to bid, whether or not we have a signed contract, whether or not work is in progress, projected completion date, when completed, and whether or not we've paid for it. So if you have any ideas or suggestions for this, let me know. Again, this is a draft, it's not final. I'm hoping what we can do, and it's posted.
I'm missing the lift money. Didn't we have $50? Didn't we have $5 in lift money too?
Uber and Lyft.
Remember that $5 in lift and Uber money? Come on.
And then we have the opiates fund too. Is that
That's
there?
it.
That's on
It's
there, that's on there.
Yeah.
I see now.
So let me know what you think. We can make some adjustments. This is posted on the OneDrive under the ARPA subfolder.
So the Main Street sidewalk, the design and build were two different bond numbers? I thought the design was inside the 1.3.
It is,
Oh, okay.
but I put it there just so you could, we
See
had
the
talked
break-
about
see the
the
breakout?
cost of the design.
Yeah, okay, so the breakout basically.
Yeah, I could subtract that from the 1.3.
Okay,
And
so the
eventually-
1.3 is inclusive of
That's right,
design and construction.
includes
Okay,
design.
great.
So,
All right, any
So
reports
that's-
from the board, or do we want to go straight to Scott here?
Just Conservation Commission's meeting tomorrow night with Ty and Bond for delineation of the Glenwood, Glendale Road.
Right.
So,
I did make a point to Bob today, that if he could work with them, because I know none of their minutes are online.
yeah,
And they clearly have them because they hand them out at the meeting.
Yeah.
So whatever he can do to get somebody to help him with that, because with this thing going on with Glendale,
yeah. they got
people are
a-
gonna be very,
they got a-
I went over there today after our discussion, and no one was in the office, but tomorrow,
okay.
get that done.
The only thing I got is Strategic Planning Committee met on the 31st of August and we reviewed the strategic plan for Mars.
Mhm.
They are presenting it to the school committee on September 15th at 6:30
Mhm.
for approval.
All right. And I'd like to acknowledge that we also had a notification that Ed Sanadella is going to be retiring at the school. Been a pretty good partner to the town of Hamden for many, many years. Whenever we had an issue, made sure the maintenance staff, he got on top of it, and we wish him the best in what he does. All right, so we have a request for an executive session, and we've been a little back and forth about the requirement and the verbiage for this. I'm going to defer to you, Bob, exactly what this is in response to a grievance, and strictly just one, Chief, right? Because the other one, you have an agreement from the principal to defer it.
No, there's three.
There's three.
Right, I'm sorry.
We need to
Two for
vote.
tonight, but the third one
We need to vote.
is going to be deferred because of a family issue,
Should be 3.
and that was a request, or no?
So there was 3 that was filed on the language of the contract for the 40-hour cap, and 3 officers.
Okay, yeah, no, but the other one
Then the other one
is being
was
deferred,
gonna be deferred
right?
Mhm.
to the 12th.
Well, I mentioned to the board, we have to decide tonight, I guess.
But he
when
was
they would
quite
like-
clear that it was the request of the individual that required this, because
request
otherwise we're
is-
so
The
tiny.
union is here.
The union requested.
Union requested, so we have the union presidents
Okay.
here,
All right,
their representative from the union office is here, and then one of the other union members is
Okay.
here, so.
So
I'll
you
entertain
can
a
still
motion to
present
go
what
into
you have.
executive session
You could still
to
present
discuss the
information, right?
discipline
Yes.
or complaints or charges against,
Yeah, that's the list of verbiage.
for police grievance, I guess charges against the police.
So I think you got two things going on there. The first one was it gonna be the discussion?
Well, we're
of-
still recording here, Chief. So I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I move to go into executive session to discuss the discipline or dismissal of or complaints or charges brought against the public officer, employee, staff, or individual This is actually a police grievance,
Right.
and we'll be hearing it in executive session brought by 3 police officers relative to a contract issue.
Yes.
So it's a bargaining issue.
With that, we return to open session.
We'll already turn to open session.
Second.
All in favor, John Flynn, aye.
Down, Davenport, aye.
Gregor Bastai.
Okay, thank you all. The recording will stop now. Have a good week.